He went alone. No army of faithful followers marched at his back. No ceremony marked any stage of his journey. He went into the desert alone, inured to the hardships of the wasteland in a way no mortal could ever hope to be. Like all moments such as these, few and far between as they were, later there would be stories. This journey, and the meeting at its end, would be refracted into a spillage of variant tales, some of which held an authentic core, far more of which were lies destined to become enshrined as truth. The remnant legion would hear many of these tales, filed and dulled and muddled by their own guarded, uneasy hope. They had nothing else to rely on. Word would reach through the brief exchanges between expeditionary fleets in deep void, and across the shrieking astropathic ducts, the impressions of half-mad psychic men and women channeling their senses into the unreliable warp. For a time, all the Revenant Legion would have were stories of transcendent choirs and cheering crowds, a scene they could all too easily believe, and one that sat unpleasantly into the silt of their own troubled hearts. But the truth, if such a thing really matters when it's always the lies that spread around, is what went alone. It was his choice to do so. He had questions to ask, though he feared the answers he'd receive, and he had a bargain to strike upon which there would be no compromise. Sanguinius had never been on a spaceship before, not outside the fractal impressions of them that sailed in his waking dreams. This one, sitting on the desert plain with its golden armor baking in the sun, had the suggestion of vulturousness. It was a thing of power and efficiency, blunt and brutal. Fire made it fly, not any notion of grace. Figures clustered around the craft's landing legs, where the ship's great metal claws gripped the radiant-soaked dust of the wasteland. These men and women were placed in the same gold as the ship, rendered upon their bodies with painstaking artistry. My father's guardians, Sanguinius thought. And what a thought it was! Not only that a being such as his father required guardians, but that he had a father at all. All the years of wondering about his own heritage, devoid of insight into his origins. And here at last was the truth, standing in the shadow of a vessel from the void. He leaned into the desert wind, stretching his muscles and rising on a thermal of bitter breeze. The temptation was there, like it always was, to soar, to break free of the ground and his responsibilities, taking to the sky and seeking distant lands where the secrets of old wars lay buried. Today that urge was both stronger and weaker. His heart was ill at ease with what this meeting would mean, but nevertheless he burned to know what lay ahead. He arced groundward, landing lightly with a scuff of his boots across the earth and a final furling of his wings. Dust swirled around his shins as he stepped forward. The golden figures carried weapons, a panoply of axes and spears and hand-caliber firearms. Sanguinius carried only his sword, undrawn, riding low on his hip. "Welcome to Balfora, Outlanders." He wondered if the Outlanders would understand him, or whether they would be forced to rely on hand gestures and awkward mimicry. "My son," said one of the golden ones, somehow speaking it silently. He felt his father's voice for the first time, as one of his own thoughts, a sensation rather than speech, backed by a tremendous feeling of suppressed force. The golden man, if he was a man, that sent the contact, seemed to be making significant efforts to restrain himself, or to contain the power within him. There was more there, though. My son rhymed with my weapon, and rhymed with the ninth, and rhymed with other concepts Sanguinius couldn't parse from the core of the man's meaning. A lifetime of perspective was bound up in that contact. and Sanguinius sensed only the gulf between his father's silent words and the meaning behind them. But he felt no threat in the touch of the mind upon mind. Confidence, impatience, love, caution, approximations of those, where words couldn't quite convey the reality. It was all there. The man, and he did seem like a man, dark of skin and hair, smelling of metal and sweat, in possession of a heartbeat, walked closer. I am the Emperor, the man said, and I am your father. Father, the man had said. The word rhymed in silence with master, with shaper, with creator. Sanguinius met the Emperor's eyes. What he saw there, glinting in the light of his father's gaze, was the answer to a question he'd never considered. This being, this Emperor, was human, but he was not exactly a man. I see the light of many souls in your eyes, many men, many women. The Emperor smiled. Is that what you see? He spoke flawless, Aeokinian, but that perfection itself was a flaw. He spoke the tongue with the same dialect and inflection as Sanguinius himself. Either the Emperor was pulling the meaning from the angel's mind, or imprinting meaning upon it. Whichever was true, he wasn't really speaking the language at all, nor was Sanguinius entirely certain he could see the man's mouth move. I have sought you for many years, said the Emperor, and behind those words Sanguinius sensed the cheering of crowds and the burning of worlds. His blood ran cold in the desert heat. I've seen shades of this meeting many times in my dreams. You are uneasy. That is natural, my son. I have come not only to liberate you from exile, but to ease your heart and mind with all you need to know. Sanguinius felt a lifetime of questions trapped in his tongue. There was one, however, that was always going to break free first. One question above all others that had plagued him and haunted his people since the tribe of pureblood had discovered him in the wildlands. They worshipped him for his strength and benevolence, but they feared him for the question that now lay unspoken between father and son. Ask! Ask the question I sense lying upon your tongue. What am I? You are my son, said the Emperor, and again meanings and concepts danced through those words. I don't know what you mean. You will, the Emperor assured him. You are the death of faith, Sanguinius replied. That I know. The Emperor regarded him before speaking. Yes, his father agreed. And also no. How do you know of such things? I told you. I have dreamed of this day, fragments, shadows, suggestions. Something that comes to me, fierce with emotion, yet raked clean of detail. Faith is a weapon, said the Emperor. A weapon that the species cannot be trusted to wield. My people revere me as their god, Sanguinius replied. That brings a measure of peace. No doubt, to you and your sky-sailing kind, we are nothing but primitives, roaches in this poisoned desert, but I reward their faith in me. I am their servant. I am mercy when my people need it most. I am death to their enemies. That does not make you a god, my son. I never said I was a god. I said my people believe me to be one. Sanguinius stared at his father's inhuman, too human eyes. My people, the pure, are to be left in peace. Whatever pacts you and I swear this day, my inviolate condition is this. No ship will enter Balfora's heavens without my mandate, and no interference will be permitted to the clans of pureblood without my permission. We have carved out the solace of peace here together. You will not threaten it, father. The Emperor nodded, not in agreement, but in sudden understanding. That is why you fear me, is it not? You fear the endangerment, of what you achieved here. I speak of loyalty and love, the angel said gently. And you speak of achievement. Am I wrong? I fear for the lives of my people, who deserve only peace. A peace which we have fought so hard for. Behind your words, I hear triumph of cultures, but I also hear the razing of cities and the burning of worlds. I hear the dirges of faiths now forbidden, and the mourning of those nations that follow them. Am I wrong? This is echoes of eternity. The emperor said nothing. Later, many times over the decades to come, Sanguinius would think back to those words. For all the purity of the emperor's intent, there were many compromises. Faith would not be tolerated, except for when it could. Religions were drowned in the ashes of defiant worlds, except when their uselessness aligned with the great work. The emperor needed the Martian Mechanicum, and he allowed them to worship him as the Messiah, the incarnated avatar of the machine god. Perhaps necessity carves holes in everyone's principles, human and god alike. But all of this would come later. There, on desert sands, that day, the angel had more questions. You keep looking at my wings. Wings, I note, you and your followers do not possess. Sanguinius scanned the men and women waiting by the landing craft. Do I bear these by your design, or some twist of misfortune? The emperor looked at him with the keen eye of an inventor. Assessing a prototype. You are exquisitely wrought, exquisitely and painstakingly, which was no answer at all. What am I? Sanguinius asked again. The emperor's voice softened, as did his expression. Only his eyes were unchanged, remaining lit by inseparable, uncountable souls. You are a gamble against the depth of hope, my son. You are a roll of the dice at the end of the game. What do you call yourself? He called himself by the names his people had given him. First, the nicknames of youth. Then, the name he'd received as he grew to lead the clans of Pureblood. A name sacred to the tribe that had come to view him as their god. A name that marked him as theirs in spirit, if not in birth, meaning of the pureblood. Sanguinius! The emperor nodded. Sanguinius, you are a Primarch, a component of the great work, stolen from me and torn from its place, denied to me all these years. I have need of you, my son. Humanity has need of you. You are instrumental to the species' salvation. I have come to lift you from these dry roots, to take you to the stars, to give you a legion to command, and a future to fight for. Once more Sanguinius heard the adulations of crowds in bright sunlight, and the cries of populations in burning worlds. He asked what no other Primarch had given voice to. Even Angron, upon his discovery, would act without asking the question Sanguinius asked now. What if I refuse? The emperor seemed to weigh this. You will not refuse. I know your soul. Here, you've saved tens of thousands of lives. With me, you will save billions of lives on millions of worlds. You will save the life of every man yet to be born. That is not something you could turn your back on. They stared into each other's eyes, father and son, creator and created. Neither argued against the truth of the emperor's words. I want something from you. I want your oath. The emperor was silent, allowing his son to continue. Do you swear, on whatever oaths you hold value to, that you will leave the clans of Pureblood in peace, untouched by your designs, unless they desire otherwise, free to exist as they always exist? believing whatever they choose to believe. The emperor hesitated. Sanguinius saw the calculation in his father's eyes as he wondered, is he taken aback by the love I bear for my people? Or is he merely considering alternative avenues around this obstacle in his great work? The emperor finally spoke. You have my promise. Sanguinius closed his wings. Let us speak of the future, father. And so they did. So that is big because it shows how the emperor, I never thought about this. The emperor doesn't speak the languages of his sons, so he has to speak to them telepathically. They probably, most of them probably never even speak to each other because they can't understand each other. So the telepaths get to speak the most. Um, that was Sanguinius sparking a deal with the emperor to leave his his purebloods alive, and his, so he calls his people the pure-blooded and they call him the pure-blooded. That's kind of his thing, and now he meets his legion. It was raining the night he met his legion. The stories would be wrong about that as well. Many of them painted a picture of the angel standing in sunlight before the arrayed ranks of his magnificent sons. The truth was that monsoon season was in full throes across the northern hemisphere of planet Tagar Patantis. Rain sighed against the descending gunship, storm winds sweeping at armor plating still gleaming with the heat of atmospheric reentry. Sanguinius stood within the Thunderhawk's crew bay, ringed by warriors in pristine white. Thoughts of Balfora were foremost in his mind, beginning the chain of events that would lead him here, to this place and time. 3 years of fighting at his brother Horus's side had finally brought him here. 3 years of learning the ways of the emerging Imperium and all its infinite complexity. 3 years of waging war alongside the warriors surrounding him now. The crescent moon and lupine face of the Luna Wolves marked their armor plating. They were, without doubt, the finest warriors, the finest men he had ever known. Nervous, Lord? One of them asked. No, Ezekiel. But I thank you for your concern. I'd be nervous if I were you, one of the others said with a grin. Surely you've got used to a certain quality by now, Lord. What if they're not the fighters we are? Won't that just break your heart? Tarek is right, Ezekiel added. Perhaps we've spoiled you these last years. I can only hope, little wolves, that if the warriors of my legion lack your tenacity on the battlefield, they also lack your immense capacity for vanity. They laughed at that, and Sanguinius had to mask his sorrow at the sound. He would miss his time with his brother's beloved legion. This was no falsehood. They were, in the parlance of Balfora, warriors to walk to the wastelands with, loyal, steadfast, disciplined. Horus had fashioned his Terran gangers and Chthonian barbarians into a weapon of beautiful precision and intimate nobility. Nervous wasn't the right word for feelings that now clouded his heart. But it wasn't entirely wrong. Many were the tales told of immortal Ninth Legion, the Revenant Legion, the Eaters of the Dead, and Sanguinius harbored no doubts as to the fighting prowess of those warriors. He was to meet for the first time. Their propensity for violence was, in fact, the only reassurance he had regarding their conduct. It has been good, Lord, said Tarek, leaning on one of the crew railings. The gunship jutted around. Fighting with you, I mean. An honor, added Ezekiel. We will miss you. Their affection brought more sincere smile to his features. He regarded them both, and then the squad of warriors behind them, each one gripping the overhead railing against the threat of turbulence. The honor was mine, my nephews, he almost added. a wish for there to always be this bond between the two legions. But with the future so in doubt, it felt worse than trite. He settled for the sincerity of what he'd already said. It would do so for now. Soon enough, the gunship shivered as it landed. Sanguinius heard the cycle down of engines, their diminishing whine replaced by the lash of monsoon rain against the hull. He felt the eyes of the Luna wolves upon him, felt their wonder at the moment's mundane majesty, and sensed their curiosity over what he would say once the gang ramp came down. Surprising no one, Tarek dared to interrupt the last seconds of reflective silence before a son of the Emperor met the thousands of warriors forged from his genetic code. The idea of ceremony was not often lost on Tarek Togarden, guardian of the Second Company. "Is your speech ready, Lord?" Lupercal gave us a grand old lecture when we gathered to meet him the first time. Brotherhood, duty, responsibility. It had it all. Rather warmed the heart, let me just tell you. "You jest," Abaddon pointed out, "but you wept with the rest of us that day." Turgarden's reply was a low chuckle, but Sanguinius didn't smile at the time. He faced forward, as if he could see through the gunship's iron skin to the ranks of waiting warriors beyond. Ezekiel, clad in ceremonial white tonight rather than the combat black of a Justarian elite, watched Sanguinius with a touch more reverence than Tarek. "Do you know what you'll say to them?" he asked. 3 years, thought Sanguinius. 3 years. And not an hour has passed within that span that I've not thought about what I might say. He watched the pictured footage of Horus first meeting the Luna wolves and studied his brother's words. His body language and the emotion that enriched both. Speeches and chants and lectures, and even sermons, of an admittedly bloodless and secular kind, had run amok his imagination in preparation for what had come next. He'd written entire scrolls worth of meticulous honesty and discarded whole tomes worth of aborted sentiment. Every imagined sentence was a possibility that had given voice with the next few minutes. "No, Ezekiel, I confess I do not." That was enough truth to silence even Torgarden. Sanguinius heard the joints of their armor purring as the Luna wolves shared unspeaking glances behind his back. "What about the war for Tagar Pentaris?" Tarek asked. "Will you want us to stay, do you think?" "We'll see," said Sanguinius. A second silence reigned. This one was even worse. Mercifully, the pilot's voice crackled across the Vox. "Clear, clear, clear!" And down went the gunship's ramp, on growling hydraulics. In came the hissing rain. Sanguinius stepped into the storm. Behind him came the Luna wolves. Before him, standing in ranks, stood the Revenant Legion. They waited in formation, statues at attention, in the storm. Helmetless, they were graven in his image. Several thousand faces resculpted through techno-magical genetics to resemble that of the father they'd never met. Their various skin shades hid nothing, and variant colors and styles of hair didn't conceal the fact either. Each one of them bore his visage. Sanguinius had been cognizant of this possibility without truly expecting it. Many of Horus's Luna wolves grew to take on his features as they ascended to the Hastarte state. But it was by no means ubiquitous among the legions. Here Sanguinius looked not merely on similarity, but simulacrum. Horus's sons resembled their Primarch, as a son might take closely after a father. Sanguinius's sons resembled their gene-sire, as his own face would look back at him in a cracked mirror. War had scarred them, but they were him, to the life. And they were afraid of him. He could read it in their eyes that matched his own, and he could sense it in the tautness of features he knew perfectly well. The torment of expectation had goaded him to believe his sons might rejoice at their first sight of him, but the reality was altogether more tense. They feared what he represented, and the many changes to come. Free of the gunship's confines, he stretched his wings in the rain. Nothing more than instinct, the way someone might raise a hand against the breeze, or to roll their shoulders to prepare for a task. But when he did it, as his white-feathered pinions flexed, several warriors in the front rank flinched. They didn't just fear what he represented, Sanguinius realized. They feared him. Perhaps they feared the mutation he bore on his back. But the Primarch didn't think it was anything so simple. They feared his very presence. Why? Rain slashed unceasingly, content to fill the terrible silence with the hiss of impact. Sanguinius felt the gaze of the Luna wolves behind him, as surely as he saw the stares of the immortal Ninth facing him. Keeping his wings close to his body, for convenience rather than caution, he started walking along the rows of gathered warriors, and their storm-washed gray. He met their eyes as he passed, and marked well the scars of war on the ceramite plate and transfigured flesh. In turn, they gazed up at him, with a desperate hope he had been expecting, coupled with a defiance he had not. They wanted this. They ached for this moment, but everything rode upon it. The pressure was practically a physical thing, bearing down on all of them. In their faces, he read their records of the Great Crusade, the drinking of blood and the eating of flesh, for tactical advantage, for survival, and rarely, but not rarely enough, for pleasure. He read stories told by the scars that marred their beauty, the chronicles of subterranean campaigns against mutated hordes and scarcely human populations, harvested for desperately needed reinforcements. In their narrowed, awed eyes, he saw the discretionary refusals at Divisio Militaris to supply them with the munitions and armor battalions to match the other newborn legions, for fear that the Revenant's degeneracy. He saw the imperial decrees breaking them apart to serve in splinter fleets, fragments of fragments attached to other legion forces. The primary reason it had taken so long to gather the legion in its entirety. He saw the hardships in their crusades, and the compromises made when fate had forced their hands. In the tilt of their heads and the set of their lips, he saw the sanctions levied against them by other, nobler legions. He saw the sins they'd committed against their own empire, and the scorn they'd endured because of it. He saw how they wore that disregard as a badge of unwanted honor. In short, he saw them for what they were, cannibals and killers with the faces of angels. Last of all, gleaming in their brazen stares, was the knowledge of their own extinction. Their time was coming to an end. Even without Sanguinius here before their gathered ranks, the lifespans of the Immortal Ninth was decidedly mortal, after all. The other legions, no matter their degrees of savagery, were reliable weapons in the Emperor's arsenal. To carve a planet apart with fear, he sent the 8th. To drown a rebellion in the blood of their own dead, he sent the 12th. The ruthlessness of these wild legions was still contained within the framework of the Great Plan. But the 9th? These blood-stained knights, with their crimson rituals, these eaters of the dead, already they'd been broken up, unreliable in legion force. Whole swathes of the expeditionary fleets refused to fight alongside them. Again and again, they were ground down to near annihilation, repeatedly bringing themselves back to the brink with tides of desperate recruitment, sustaining themselves by elevating the genetic dregs of the species to a state of imperial perfection. Their ways populated their ranks with men exalted in flesh, yet hollow in soul. Duty could only carry a soldier so far. These transhuman men who fought for the Imperium, but they cared for little, they loved nothing. There was something ennobling in their suffering, only pride in their capacity to endure. The pride of a cornered animal is all they have left. As soon as he thought As soon as the thought occurred to him, Sanguinius dismissed it. No, it's not all they have left. It's all they've ever had. It's all they were given. How like the people of Balfora they are, so vulnerable despite their fortitude, able to survive but never thrive. Sanguinius had adopted the clans of pureblood, and grew to become their champion. He could have ruled over them as their god king, but he had always wanted nothing more than to protect them. He elevated the pure tribes from the travails of their rad-soaked homeland, not through dominance over them, but by his service to them. And now, the Revenant's fear made sense. It was so obvious once he'd witnessed it with his own eyes, a truth no hololithic report could ever convey. What would this winged demigod demand of them? Could they ever live up to what he would ask? Would they ever want to try, even if they despised their new father and his vision? Sanguinius kept walking, kept studying them. He thought of the oaths of fealty he could take and make them swear tonight. He thought of the glory he could promise them at the end of pride, and of the pride he could convey at the Emperor granting him command of his own legion. He was their Primarch, and he had every right to play out the moment the way his sons expected, by binding them to him with sacred oaths of their allegiance to him. But the first words he spoke to his legion were far from bombastic speeches. "What is your name?" Sanguinius asked the closest revenant, the first of his sons that he ever met face to face. His tone was gently firm, his curiosity evident. The scarred warrior replied, lips wet with the rain, "Idamas." Sanguinius saw the conflict in the man's eyes, as the Astartes hesitated, unsure whether to add an honorific. "Thank you," Sanguinius replied. And he turned to the next warrior in line. "And you, your name?" "Ahmed." Again, hesitation, though Ahmed added a subdued "Lord" after a moment's pause. "Thank you. And you?" And it went on. Soon he wasn't going one by one anymore, instead beckoning them to break ranks and come forward in clusters. He looked each of them in the eye as they proclaimed their names to him, many of them shouting over the others as the adrenaline of the moment took hold, and he committed their identities to his preternatural memory. These were his first sons, and he would remember every one of them until the day of his death. When it was done, silence descended once more, dense with expectation. Before, the Revenants had regarded him with the clash of anticipation and defiant fear. Now the challenge in their stares bordered on feverish. Why had he asked their names? What did he intend to do with that knowledge? Sanguinius saluted them, his fist against his heart. At last he spoke. "You have told me your names, and I have read the records of your deeds. I know you, and I know how my father's Imperium, our Imperium, looks upon you. You have served with loyalty and been paid in gratitude and spite, both in equal measure. You have been given difficult tasks, only to find yourselves mistrusted for achieving them in ways you believe best. I will not say you were wrong to act as you have acted, nor will I blame those that have come to fear you. That is the past. And this is our chance to step back from the edge of extinction. My first command is to bring you together once more. We will fight together as one bloodline. As of this moment, you are a broken legion no longer." The Revenant's eyes were upon him. He felt no doubts now. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. "Swear me no oaths. Make me no promises. Do not offer me your allegiance purely because my blood runs in your veins." Sanguinius laughed suddenly. "In fact, do not offer me your allegiance at all. Not until you believe me worthy of it." The Primarch drew his sword, plunging it to the earth before the gathered ranks. He spread his wings, letting the rain sheet them in pearlescent drops. And then, to the amazed horror of his sons, he went to one knee in obeisance. Even with his head down, his voice carried above the storm. "Instead, let me offer you my allegiance. Take my oath, here and now. I am Sanguinius, son of the Emperor, Primarch of the Ninth Legion, and I make you this promise. I will stand with you in glory, or die alongside you in shame. I come to you tonight not to enforce my ways upon all of you, but to learn your ways. The Revenant Legion looked upon him with breathless amazement. The punishment and chastisements they had expected hadn't manifested. Their self-righteous vows they'd anticipated, that they must reshape themselves in the new Father's image, hadn't been spoken. This legion is not mine. It is not a possession to be manipulated purely by my will. This legion is ours. And though you are my sons, fated to answer me, I am your Primarch, and I will answer to you. Sanguinius heard the Luna Wolves shifting uncomfortably. This is plainly not how it had gone with Horus. It was not how these meetings were supposed to go. The angel drew his blade from the wet earth, raising his voice over the thunder. Each one of you is a bloody veteran of the Great Crusade, and I too have fought the Imperium's war, learning of our empire at my brother Horus's side. But I am as new to my title as I am to the war we fight. In time, I will come to lead you, but for now, I ask you only to let me fight by your side. If you refuse me, I will leave with no grudge. I will break my pact with the Emperor and return to Balfora. I will leave you to survive as you've survived thus far. But if you accept my offer, then let us learn together what our legion will be. Let us write a story with a united bloodline. Sanguinius let the rainfall clean his blade. He sheathed it in a smooth motion, and rippled his wings against the storm's chill. The Emperor has charged us to take this world. He wants Tagar Pataris. He wants it compliant before the turn of the solar month. I have seen the plans. I have seen the Imperial Army communications pleading for the presence of Luna Wolves here. The formal request that my brother's pristine sons remain to bring about the compliance the Ninth Legion cannot be trusted to achieve. The Revenants stirred, shifted, clutched weapons tighter. They had their pride. They had it in abundance, and it would make for a fine beginning. The Emperor wants this world, and the Luna Wolves would love to be the ones to give it to him. It's my belief that we don't need our esteemed cousins, though. I believe we can take this planet without their aid, and in doing so, we will write the first chapter in our Legion's true history. He turned to the side, an intermediary between the Luna Wolves officers and several thousand remnants standing in broken ranks. Ezekiel looked faintly amused. Tarek was fully grinning. What say you, warriors of the Ninth Legion? What say you to our noble ambassadors from the 16th? Thousands of voices rose, a rolling thunder of mockery, refusal, and defiance. The Revenant Legion shouted down the Luna Wolves with a unified roar, succeeding also in outshouting the storm. Ezekiel stepped forward, raising his hands for quiet. It took some time to descend. Tarek moved with him, and as Abaddon inclined his head in respect to the quieting revenants, the latter gave a teasing courtly bow. Tell them, Lord Sanguinius, it's the considered opinion of myself and my dear first captain Abaddon here that we can pull our Legion forces back and let the Ninth handle things. Sanguinius thanked them both with his gaze and watched them moving to reboard the gunship, and turned to face his new legion once more. My friends, my sons, let us make ready. We have our first war to win.